I live right next to a Navajo reservation and have made friends with many of the people there my age. We like to hang out, play video games, and just be normal teens. I walk over a lot since my best friend lives a little less than a mile away from me. This isn't a long trek and usually only takes me about 25 to 30 minutes. I've made this trip dozens of times and have grown very comfortable with it. I know the people along the way, so I'm not scared or on edge. There is a patch of forest, however, about midway there. It's a little unnerving sometimes. There is always that feeling of being watched. This was a regular occurrence for me, so I tried to just ignore it and shake it off as my mind playing tricks on me. This day I spent more time at my friend's house than I meant to, and when I left it was already getting dark. I reached the stretch of forest right as the sun disappeared from the sky. I shivered a little as I readied myself to begin the journey through. I was 10 steps in when I heard a branch snap. You know the sound. The one that screams there is definitely someone or something there with you. I froze, not sure of what I should do next. Should I run? Should I turn around and book it back to my friend's house? I didn't know the best option in this situation. I whispered, "Hello?" hearing my voice crack as the words fell from my lips. I don't know why I even opened my mouth, but it was out there, so I listened for any reply. My heart sank when the answer came back in the sound of my voice. "Hello?" I started to breathe too fast. My heart pounded against my chest. I felt like I might faint. "Hello," my voice came again, but not from my mouth. I wanted to run, but my feet felt cemented to the ground. I couldn't scream, I couldn't reply, as my voice echoed over and over from a short distance away. I couldn't pinpoint exactly where it was coming from. It sounded like it was everywhere around me. "Hello, hello, hello," it repeated. "Stop it!" I finally managed to tear from my lips. Everything went silent. For a long minute, nothing happened. The air grew stale, and I realized for the first time that there were no typical forest sounds. There were no bugs, no frogs or crickets, nothing. I stood there, terrified, waiting to see what would happen next. "Stop it," it mimicked back. I'd had enough and was willing my heavy legs to move. Before I could take a step, I heard rustling in the bushes 20 feet to my left. I watched in horror as a deer head with huge antlers protruded through the brush. As it came further out and stood up on twos, I took off. I flew out of those woods and all the way home in record time. I said nothing to my mom when I got there. I just went up to my room, laid down, and thought about what happened. My mother came in at some point and asked me if everything was all right. I replied that yes, I was just tired. I don't know why I didn't tell her. I guess I might have been afraid of how she would react. I called my friend and told him everything. He freaked out and told me that no matter what happened that night, to not reply or look out my window. This terrified me even more. He said to call him the next morning and he would explain more, and that he had to speak to his grandfather as soon as possible. That night I didn't sleep at all. I stayed awake, listening to every little sound the night brought. Around 3 a.m., just as I was about to drift off, the air changed. The night sounds quieted. I felt my heart begin to pound. I lay there and waited, pulling the covers up over my head like a child, far too scared to move. It came after a long moment. "Hello?" I cried. It was all I could do. "Hello? Stop it!" It mocked what I had said in the woods again. It was terrifying enough when it copied what I said, but then it did something new. It called my name. My mother's voice. "Amy, Amy, come here." "Hello, stop it!" My voice again. For the rest of the night, the creature outside my window called my name in my mother's voice and repeated what I said in the woods over and over. In the morning, when the sun broke through the dark, it finally stopped. I fell into a fitful sleep. I woke around 12 to my friend calling to tell me he had spoken to his grandfather and could explain what happened to me. He said there was a creature they called Yi Nald Lushi, he who goes on all fours, or a skinwalker. He explained that it was an evil witch that used dark magic to transform into an animal with the attributes it required, and that it had caught my scent and knew me now. I was also given a warning that since it knew me, it would always follow me, that I would always have to be careful. Last night I heard scratching on my window, then a low hum. The creature began saying my name again, but also adding in things I hadn't said in my mother's voice. At one point it started calling my name, but drawing it out really far, like, "Ah, me." It tried to get me to come outside, or to open the door and let it in my house. This went on all night. At this point, I feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do. Is it seriously going stalk the shadows around me for the rest of my life? I don't think I can take that. I've always had a love for camping and hiking. Something about the feel of being outdoors and with pure nature is comforting, to say the least. I went by myself many times, but most often with my girlfriend, since she loved nature, which we had in common. This story took place on one of those times I was with my girlfriend. It was a foggy Friday on which we had no plans, and my girlfriend brought up the idea of camping, so of course I almost immediately agreed. We planned that we would take a hike through some woods that were about an hour drive away from us, then set up camp. All seemed well. We packed our bags and walked, since at the time we had no car, so it took us about 3 to 2.5 hours. When we arrived, the sun was on the horizon and everything looked beautiful. We began to hike and all was fine except one eerie thing. My girlfriend kept saying she kept seeing something watching her from behind the trees quite far into the forest. I brushed this off as she was quite an anxious, paranoid person. After this, she began to walk closer to me and everything seemed fine again. We got lucky and found a beautiful clearing deep in the heart of the forest. This place was great, as it was a large open area with some fallen over trees in a square kind of formation in which we set up our tent. We unpacked after setting up our tent and began to cook some food over a fire, trying hard to get it to be perfect for us. We ate and decided we would have a talk, listen to some music, then get some good rest. We had a few interesting chats for some reason on pretty horrible topics like suicide and murder, which for some reason we are into. We talked about a few certain people like the Zodiac Killer, in which we had a long discussion over if the case would ever be solved or if it would linger in the back of our minds for the rest of our lives. It was now 10 p.m. and we decided it would be great to get some sleep. We climbed into our premium sleeping bags and drifted off to sleep. I woke to see her leaving the tent and I asked, "Where are you going?" She responded with, "Bathroom break," but in a tone as of which she was going to cry. "Are you all right?" I asked solemnly. "Yeah, I'm fine." She proceeded to leave the tent without another word. Minutes passed, which then turned into 15 minutes. I decided to check on her. I grabbed my flashlight and pulled myself out of the tent, still half asleep. All I could hear was a distant whimper coming from deep inside of the woods. I began to make my way to where I thought the noise was coming from. I froze. There right in front of me was my girlfriend, suspended from a rope which was tied into a noose. That wasn't the worst part. Half of her face was mauled brutally, flesh ripped bare from the bone. In her final breath, she spoke to me. "I will always love you and stay away from the cave in the distance." That was the last thing I heard from her before she died. Her body went limp in front of my very own eyes. The cave, I thought in a panic. I turned to see a cave smeared and collapsed on by dirt. I had to investigate to see if the thing that did this to her was in there. I began to shake as I advanced towards the cave. What I saw still haunts me to this very day. A brutally deformed old man that didn't seem fully human was crouched over half of my girlfriend's face, making horrible chewing noises while giggling. "You know," he spoke, "I have watched you two since you first stepped foot on this land, and knew that one of you guys would be explorative enough to find me. And you could have prevented this by just believing her when she said she saw something." He said mockingly, "I wasn't going to stand there anymore. I made a break for the way out of the forest, stumbling onto our original path. I ran down it, feeling something breathing on my neck hairs as I went. I sped up. I could hear that thing begin to lose energy as I could hear distant panting and shouting. 'I'll find you someday,' I heard. 'You can join that stupid woman of yours in the futile void we call death.' I kept running. I eventually made it to a road where I hitchhiked home. I told everyone what happened. They all believed me. Turns out, there has always been a legend of a creature taking the form of an old man in that forest. What still gets me is that I could have prevented all of this just by saying a word. That image of my girlfriend Maud still stays with me now. Every time I sleep, I swear I can make out an old man hunched in my room, getting closer day after day.